Hi, I'm Paul Murphy, Vice President of Worldwide Marketing with DataCore Software. You're not going to hear anything from me for the next 30 minutes. You're not going to hear anything about business benefits, value, bigger, better, faster. You're sick of all the marketing hype that goes on in the storage industry, and so are we. DataCore Labs is all about letting you hear directly from the people that are creating storage solutions every day in the lab. This isn't about marketecture or all the marketing hype that's out there. This is your opportunity to communicate directly with the people that are actually making the solutions that change the way you look at data storage. So I'm done. This is all you'll hear from me. Enjoy the show and welcome to DataCoreLabs.com.
My favorite movie of all times is Live and Let Die. My favorite artist is Pink Floyd. My favorite artist is Skydog. My favorite hobby is riding my bicycle because it gives me freedom and because I can get my frustrations out doing it. Hello, I'm Ben Treiber, Director of Strategic Systems Engineering for DataCore Software. I've been with the company about 15 years, and in the past I've managed migration services delivery for data migration specifically for about a dozen or so customers or more, all ranging from enterprise level to small to medium business. Whether it's a greenfield migration or a greenfield installation of DataCore software or an installation in an existing environment, migration always elicits a reaction, for better or for worse. DataCore can turn any grimaces into a smile. So I need to step back a minute and define data migration and what it means to me for a moment. This discussion is not going to focus on application movement or porting data from one application to another. It's not going to talk about things like VM, virtual machine migration. What it is going to talk about, though, is migration in the sense of changing media or devices on which the data itself sits or resides. Want to talk about, or some of the reasons for data migration are that the customer needs to replace an aging piece of storage, and more often than not these days, it is storage that's becoming end of life, storage that's either too expensive to renew the support on, or storage that is physically falling apart. They do so with the intent to capitalize on better economics. Reference my my discussion of the maintenance costs, but also they do so to capitalize on performance improvement, which generally comes with the new gear or new technology as well. We all know that storage technology has come a long way. You know, I can remember when 500 gigabyte disk drives were the norm. Now we rarely speak of disk drives of sizes less than a terabyte or 2 terabytes. Another reason for data migration is that a data center needs to be moved. Okay? There are all sorts of mergers and acquisitions and consolidations going on out there. I don't just mean in the business sense, I mean in the data sense as well. Some customers are moving from their own internal facilities to co-location facilities simply because they want to get rid of that Murphy effect where they have to deal with failures of power and cooling and things of that nature. But also, you know, going to a colo makes a lot of sense from a security standpoint as well. So that's why customers are doing it these days. It's just getting too expensive and there's not enough space in customers' data centers to house all of their data. Last but not least, they're moving perhaps to the cloud, and I'll cover that topic more a little bit later. So I want to discuss a little bit about how data migrations are done conventionally these days. The first and probably the most common way a data migration is done, and this is true for whether the device is changing or not, is a file copy. That's usually a quick and dirty way to get data from point A to point B. But some of the challenges with a file copy are the fact that if you're running an application, that application has to be quiesced while you do the file copy. And then while you're doing the file copy, you may or may not be able to preserve the timestamp on that file, the permissions on that file, and things of that nature. So you lose all ability or some ability to audit the changes and lifespan of that file. Another methodology also on the slow side of things is the backup and restore. That procedure can be time consuming too. It takes care of the problems with file copy most often, but it results often in a lot of downtime, again, because it takes a while to back up and restore the data, and you hope the tapes are working well as well. Another methodology is through purpose-built appliances. The thing about those is that they tend to be costly because you don't tend to use them as often as you do any other devices in your environment. In fact, I was talking with a gentleman yesterday who mentioned to me that he had been given a proposal by a well-known storage vendor that they would gladly migrate his storage or his existing storage to his solution with a special purpose piece of hardware and $100,000. Okay, that sounds expensive to me. And then storage solutions these days have a capability built into them oftentimes to migrate data from the old to the new. The issue with that is that it tends to be limited in scope and most often limited in ways that encourage you to migrate data to that specific device, but not necessarily among the different devices in your environment. So, I'm often asked, what are the reasons that people undertake migration? Well, actually, it is to gain more storage efficiency, but the act of migration itself is really the epitome of inefficiency. I could talk about this for the rest of the day, but I'm sure that wouldn't make for a very exciting topic. Migration itself, by definition, is inefficient. You've got to suspend access to the data oftentimes while you're migrating the data. There are often multiple migrations associated with any given individual migration. What I mean by that is that there is a tendency to have a lot of do-overs in cases where the first attempt at migration doesn't go so well, or it doesn't look like you're going to make your maintenance window, and for all of those reasons. Then there's the problem, and this falls under the category of do-overs. What if the resource you're migrating to turns out to be inadequate? Okay? There's always the possibility of out-of-box mortality, as I like to call it. You've unboxed a shiny new array, you've set it up, you've racked it up, you've been very careful, you turn it on and it works well for 2 or 3 days or 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden things just go haywire. That happens more often than not. So then you're forced to abandon the migration that, with any luck you're undertaking, hopefully you haven't completed the migration at that point. So you've got no back out other than to do it over. And then there's another hidden cost of migration, and that is the need to develop and execute an effective test method to verify that the data you migrated is actually good to go, good to use, and what you want to use. Those can be quite meticulous tests, and understand that you're relying on people that aren't necessarily in the habit of testing their data from day to day. So they're either going to be not meticulous enough, or they're going to be so meticulous it's going to take you a protracted amount of time. Okay? All the while, you're stuck there out of production while people are taking a look with a loop on your data to determine whether it's good or not. So let's talk a little bit about the obstacles. There's really no need to dwell on this one. It's a simple fact that storage hardware vendors have no motive for making the process easy on you, because you're either, you're migrating away from their environment. Storage really wasn't meant to communicate with each other. So for example, if you're going from a Dell EqualLogic to a Dell Compellent, you may have a challenge with that. And then, of course, even though I discussed this already, time still remains a factor, because depending on your methodologies for migration, speed is always time is always of the essence in there. And of course, scheduling is complicated and contracted at the same time. What I mean by that is that it's very rare that you can migrate all your data at once, declare an end and a beginning right at the outset of the project. Most oftentimes, you've got to work around other schedules, and you've got to work around unforeseen issues, and you've got to deal with the fact that storage is growing all the time. It never stays still. So what can we do to assure migrations can be accomplished within available time allotted? Well, that's $1 million question. Customers report to me that actually they rarely finish the migration within the time allotted. And what that means is that they need to start over, again, wasting time. It's difficult to ensure that the unknown isn't going to occur and that you are going to go as planned. These aren't tasks that storage administrators perform every day, and if they say they do perform every day, then there's a problem right there. There are all the different technologies that we discussed, and certainly that plays a factor, because you never do the same thing the same way twice. And then you also never know whether your migration target device is going to hold up to the load that you put it under. That is because your database is likely to present, database or mail application is likely going to present that new storage with a load that is unique. I mean, as engineers, we can test the load, we can develop test cases to be reasonably certain that it'll hold up, but you never really know until you get your data there. And the last point, and probably the most important point in all of this, is that migration raises organizational visibility. What I mean by that is that everyone in the organization likely knows, if it should take a long time or be particularly difficult, that you've done a migration. And so, as humans, we tend to see ghosts. So, what steps do I need to follow? This is the meat of my presentation here. What steps do I need to follow to make data migrations easier and to get my weekends back? And I've got one word answer for that one. It's abstraction. What you want to do is you want to separate, isolate, decouple, virtualize the disks that you are migrating, abstract them from the physical storage that you're working with. That's job one. So from the application's perspective, the original disk or LUN remains unchanged as far as that application's concerned. It's transparent to the application and therefore the application. You can complete that abstraction in seconds, not minutes, hours, or days. That would be the ideal. And you can return to production as quickly as possible or sooner. So with pass-through, contingency is continuous. That is, you're able to reverse the pass-through at any time during the migration process. With pass-through, you can also use the commodity RAM as read cache and therefore gain performance improvement. In fact, let me tell you a little story here about a customer that was a skeptic that I helped convince pass-through was the way to go. He had an application that was an Oracle RAC application sitting on top of Oracle Virtual Server. That application consisted of 15 LUNs from his source storage in 3 volume groups, and it was from an older EMC CX700. He had just recently purchased some NEC D4 series storage. That was his new storage. It took him only 15 minutes to redirect his LUNs to his application host to DataCore Software and for DataCore to pass it back through to his application host. So actually what we did was we told his storage administrators on a Friday afternoon to take their application down. They had a maintenance window, a very brief one. We did the redirection and pass-through in 15 minutes, had them bring their applications back up and verify that the LUNs were the same as they were before they took their application down. Notice we didn't tell them we were going to do a migration. So if you get it, the migration was less of a hassle. The pass-through was less of a hassle because the application owners were actually unaware that it was taking place. He was given the all clear for that NEC storage the following Monday. So he actually began his migration during business hours, during the middle of the day, and the only thing the users noticed was an improved performance. Okay? So how is this transparent? Well, let me just summarize what makes it transparent. The first is the cache. During the migration, DataCore's read cache improves performance to the application layer because the application is actually reading from RAM at RAM speeds. DataCore's migration takes advantage underneath that cache and allows for a large sequential block copy between the old storage and the new storage. The writes that occur while this migration is taking place are applied both to the source and the destination. The source being the original disks that we started with in the beginning. Remember, I've got a backout plan, simply pass through the disks that are behind me. And then, so you quickly understand that what's going on here is that the customer is constantly validating the data with the actual business case that they're using, and DataCore's automation is then validating that the copy is in fact block for block the same as the source. So, you know, I'm asked to talk about what we're doing in our labs. First thing I want to say is that this isn't DataCore doing it in its labs. In fact, we have thousands of customers doing migrations, data migrations, in practice every day, whether they're conscious of it or whether they're deliberately migrating from one storage solution to another. It's the customer's choice. We give them the freedom to do this. We give them the freedom via user interface commands or via PowerShell commandlets, which allows them to automate the process of migration, or through a feature we have called auto-tiering, which evaluates the workload being placed on it on the virtual disk by the application and placing or replacing the data on storage that's best suited to handle the performance demands. So virtualization is much more than a migration tool. That's the point I'm making here. DataCore features don't occlude one another. What I mean by that is that when you start a migration, you've got instant high availability features for business continuance. You've got instant replication for distance migrations. You've got snapshots, not just for the physical protection of the data, but for the logical protection of the data. That is snapshots and continuous data protection. Continuous data protection is like TiVo for your disk. And after the migration's complete, we've got an automatic write-back cache that gets enabled to further improve performance and to allow your applications truly to read and write from RAM at RAM speeds. All the while, through the beauty of virtualization, being able to use unlike storage in your environment. So no need for me to migrate from or within the same vendor's solutions. So migration is just one benefit of virtualization, and migration is inevitable. It's not a matter of if you're going to do it, it's a matter of when you're going to do it. So you might as well make it as easy as possible. You might as well make it as safe as possible. You want to choose your migration from a hardware independent vendor, and you probably want to choose one that allows virtualization as well. You want to capitalize on prior, current, and future technologies, and you also want to make it as transparent as possible. What do I like about working at DataCore? I like working with the people, number one. Number two, I like being on the bleeding edge of technology with a visionary company. Our founder made a statement on the day I started that has really, or was really the roots of the statement that VMware made just the other day, which is, you know, software-defined storage. That's what it was. We established a leadership very early on, and we've been easily able to maintain that leadership over the course of the last 15 years. It has a lot to do with the fact that the low-level software that is in our product today is the same low-level software, because of good design and good vision, that we started with 15 years ago. So in that 15 years, we have spent our time making that software ever more stable. We have not spent the past 15 years porting it from operating system to operating system. We have not spent the last 15 years chasing all the different fads of storage virtualization or virtualization in general. We have focused on one vision. That vision is the abstraction and advanced features such as thin provisioning, tiering, and mirroring for high availability. It was a major healthcare provider for the armed services. One of our professional services delivery members was on site, as we often do, giving customers a walkthrough of the techniques we use for successful data migration. While he was there, he happened to notice the health of the source of the storage solution that they were using to migrate from to get to the new storage solution. Using his background and his expertise, he warned that customer that time was of the essence in his migration. Now, the customer didn't want him to stick around for the migration because things had to be coordinated. Customer enjoyed the freedom we gave him to do it at his pace, but the customer called us back to thank us for pointing out to him that his existing storage was on its last legs, because it failed catastrophically shortly after they got their migration complete.